Welcome to the Fantasy Thinker. I'm Jared Quartermanch, and today we're doing yet another episode of Comics versus Prose. This is number 11. And so today we will be going over Assassin's Apprentice 2, issue number 5 from Dark Horse Comics. This is the second series of the adaptation of Robin Hobb's Assassin's Apprentice that Dark Horse is putting out. And this is the fifth issue in that second series. And it was a very interesting issue. This was, I guess we could call this the skill training issue. And Fitz, our hero here, goes through quite a bit. In this particular issue. Once again, script by Jody Hauser, illustrated beautifully by Ryan Kelly, colors, outstanding colors by Jordi Belair, and lettering, which is not to be forgotten in these books. It's a key component of comics. Letters by Hassan Otsmani El How. I hope I pronounced that right. It's probably not. But it was quite the issue. You can see by the cover here by Anna Steinbauer that Fitz is standing at attention, and the threat of a pointy weapon is there, and the threat is dark, and he's kind of in the spotlight there, so the spotlight's on him a little bit in this standing at attention. And usually standing at attention means a military or similar type of situation going here where it's not usually associated with something nice and cozy and calm. So we get into it here. I noticed that page 1, if you remember the last episode, we ended off in the middle of chapter 14 with the events of last issue. But this time, page 1 in here has a lot of inbox exposition here that actually goes back to the epigraph of chapter 14, which details Galen's character, as a person, who he was, where he came from, and stuff like that. Galen is a guy who's going to be training Fitz, or maybe training Fitz in the skill. And so, page 1 gets to that, has that description in the narration, in the text narration, while the artwork is showing us what Fitz is doing. And you can see what he's doing is he's walking to the top of this tower here, and he's starting to mingle around with some of his fellow trainees. I hesitate to call them students because, like I said, it's more of a very harsh basic training type situation here in the skill, magic. So there's a lot of exposition in this beginning of in the middle of chapter 14 that kind of explains what he's doing, explains the setup of this, where they are in the situation, and the gathering of the people together. And we move right on to, let's see here, a lot of exposition, and then it's kind of interesting because in the book, she explains a lot of the names of some of the other trainees here. In the comic, that doesn't happen. The names are left out. It seems that these other students, the names, for the purposes of the adaptation, the names just aren't as important enough to get into. Whereas in the book, a lot of the names are detailed and a little bit of a description of each of the other students. And so right at the the end of the first page, we have a little slam there in these large artistic words, and it's kind of given us what it says here on the page is, he let the door of the stairwell slam shut behind him. So, that indicates somebody's coming. And of course, it is the teacher, it is the trainer, Galen. So we move on right away, and the dialogue's pretty much taken right from the book for page 2 and 3 here. And there's a nice description of what Galen is, how he dresses and what he looks like in that clothing in the book here, and that is only detailed by the artwork. And so we see he's dressed kind of like a fop. He's noble bearing. He's got this very tight clothing, which is significant to the description of this guy's character. He's very uptight, and so it kind of fits perfectly. Um, and so that's given us to us in the excellent artwork. And then on page 3, we have a description of the tower and the place where they're at, and that's kind of given in the pictures in the artwork on page 3. And there's a lot of dialogue on page 3 taken right from the book, and it's pretty good matchup word for word. As we move right on to page 4, where um, there's some it's interesting because in the book, the book is first person from Fitz's perspective, and so on page 4 there's a lot of dialogue in the comic from Galen in in all this stuff. All this stuff is still in parentheses, so it's indicated as dialogue from Galen. In the book, though, it's just Fitz telling us what he said and not actual dialogue of in quotes. And it's such an interesting distinction from the novel to the comic on how it's presented to us. The exact same information, though, and so that's very telling how they do that, and it suits the medium well. Um, there was a lot skipped on page 4, just for time constraints. So it skips ahead in the book pretty far. And there's a lot of on page 4 in here. There was a lot of mixing up of the order of stuff, as we see here. Uh, Fitz moving along, and Fitz encountering in the kitchen. He's stealing stuff for the dog, and food for the dog, and the dog is talking to him here. And then just the order of how some of this went is a little mixed up from what it was in the book, and that was probably to show the just for artwork placement purposes, and why they had the panel placement and stuff like that. They had to mix it up in a certain way so that it made sense in this format. Whereas in the novel, in the book, you can just explain it however you want. So interesting choices. There was a rapid fire progression of pages from page 5 and 6 in here, because in the book it only encompassed 2 short paragraphs, and we had 2 whole pages in here, but it was kind of like action oriented, and so that makes sense, and so um, it was Fitz trying to be on time for his training, and didn't go that well. So 2 quick pages, 2 quick paragraphs, boom, there we go. And then we get to even page 7. was only another couple paragraphs in the book. And like I said, when you have that much time on the comic page to detail such a short section that you're detailing in the book, it's pretty exact. It's pretty much word for word, picture for a description, taken from the book, put onto the page of the comic book. All right. And so this next section in the book here is very interesting. There's a lot of description of what's going on between Galen and his students, and there's a lot of dialogue from strictly Galen's part because he doesn't allow his students to talk back at him at all. And so there, all that stuff was, let's see here, all this training and stuff was put in red. This is a new color palette that we haven't explored yet in this series. And this, because this stuff is being told from Fitz's memory, this red kind of indicates that this was a painful part of his life, a painful part of his training, something that he looks back on a little bit in anger and in that kind of mood, even though by his description in the book, he you can tell he's trying to be as objective about um, his accounting as possible. But I thought the comic did a great job of showing with that color palette that this was not a period of life he enjoyed. So I think that was really really good decision on their part and really well done. All right, so um, we move on to pages. Let's see. Um, 8, 9, 11. Let's see. Yeah, 8, 9, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Um, where uh, the Fitz is recovering in his room, and the fool comes in to talk to him again. Um, Once again, short sections in the book, only a couple paragraphs per page. The dialogue's taken right from it, and like you can't really. There's really no distinction. I mean, it's pretty much word for word, picture for picture, and it's just done very well. And I thought it was just very good points. There's little tiny distinct differences about where they meet up. Um, in the book, Fitz wasn't in bed when he ran into the fool. In the book, Fitz was starting down the stairs to go back to the kitchen very painfully. He had just had an ordeal before this with the training, and he starts going back down to the kitchen. That's where he runs into the fool, and they go back. In here, they just had the fool coming right into the bedroom and bringing food for the dog and stuff like that. And so it was. I thought that was a wise decision. There was no need to show the back and forth that you can explain easily in a novel. All right, so after that, that's actually where chapter 14 ends. So in chapter 15, we get a little epigraph about it's Fitz talking about the skill in the elderlings, which does not appear in the comic as of yet. The comic has not really focused any time on the elderlings as of yet, so we don't know much about them if you're just reading the comics. I mean, we don't know much about them anyways yet in this book, in this series. I mean, the series is called The Realm of the Elderlings, basically, or the whole thing. Um, I mean, eventually, I imagine those are going to come into play in a much bigger aspect, but of course, this is only the first book in the first half of a book of a very long series. So it makes sense that we only get a little glimpse, a little mention of them. Anyways, after the epigraph, the book, the comic and the book match up perfectly. as we move on to page 12. Um, and there's a lot of um, uh, exposition in the narration boxes, and that is taken, here and there, pretty much from the book. The book goes a bit deeper into descriptions, and it goes a bit deeper into time passing. Winter deepened and it was cold and dark on the tower top. And you can infer a little bit of that from the artwork, but it helps understand the time frames a little better in the book than in the comic. But it not crucial to understanding the story from the comic perspective. Um, and so they did a nice little interesting thing here. And on page 13. Yes. Ah. First things first. On page in during this section, Fitz does mention in the book that Burek, our old friend Burek from before, who Fitz has nothing to do with now, because he's been given to Galen completely for training. But Burek does make an appearance in the book. Doesn't like what he sees with the bruises on Fitz's face, but Fitz kind of turns away from him so that he doesn't get involved. That's not shown in the comic, so I can understand that decision to keep that out because like I said, adaptations need to fit the format, and they only have so much room to put that in here. So, interesting thing they did in here is there is certain inner dialogue that when Galen is testing his power against Fitz's, there's certain inner dialogue in the book that's in italics in here that they use this cool lettering, word balloon um, symbolism here with the freaky like fiery circle around the word balloon to indicate that kind of inner thought. And I really liked that, how they did that. And it kind of indicated that it was only between them because you had the magical, that indicates some sort of magical stuff going on between them. And as the rest of the students are kind of just in the background, kind of just standing around, so you can kind of figure that they don't know what's going on here, because they're very stoic and staring straight ahead like they're supposed to be doing. So I thought that was a pretty good representation of what was described in the book for that confrontation between them. Um, so we move on to the next couple pages. Just the next page 14. I wanted to point out once again the little subtleties in the artwork we see up here. Yeah. Um, in the book, it says he grins smugly, and I thought the artist did a great job of just giving him that smug look that was described. And in the dialogue, once again, is taken word for word, and it is really well done there. We move on to page 15. It continues on just pretty much word for word. Once again, at the bottom, we get the funky word balloons to indicate that it's only between them, and of course the magic artwork coloring there. And as we move on, we go back because now there's the big confrontation. We go back into the red um, background with all the magic stuff going on around it. There's a lot more of the yellowish, skill magic interpretation being being indicated by the coloring artwork there. And so, and of course, this was not a pleasant time at all for Fitz. Very, very exciting, gripping, dramatic stuff going on here. And Fitz is defeated. Um, and I thought the on the next page, um, the description in the book was about his condition and the bruises and the just how poorly he fared. And I like the artwork really displays that there. So it's great job. Great job by the artist there. And he perfectly describes, perfectly renders that in picture format. Um, really like that. There was a bit of little bit of change in the narration at the end of page 18 that I wasn't sure exactly where they were trying to end it in the book. It was kind of mixed up in how they interpreted it at the end of page 18, but it was still completely understandable. When I read because I read the comic first, like I said before, and then I have no problem understanding what happened there. The book, it might have clarified a little things, but I was I think the book was a little more poetic and metaphorical in some of the description, whereas the comic was just trying to show us, and that's okay. That's good. All right. Um, Page 20 was very quick, um, and it was only one paragraph's worth in the book. So we're going to end here on page 20, right in the middle of chapter 15, uh, as we wait till next month. But in the, I like how in the comic, because in the book, we just he hears the dog calling to him, telling him, you know, the dog wants him to be okay, basically, as all dogs do, and the but I like how they, because Fitz was like out of it, he wanted to die, he thought he was going to die, he wanted to, but the dog got his attention, and I like how in the artwork that the dog was still kind of outlined in a unreal type sense, so that it gave him, gave Fitz awareness of him, but Fitz didn't have to be, wasn't opening his eyes. He wasn't aware of him as physically. He was aware of him mentally, and I like how the artwork showed that. I like how they portrayed that. That was something that was really a little bit different from the book and how it was portrayed in the book. The book only, they took the narration from the book directly. It was only a short paragraph in here. That would only equal a short paragraph in the book. Uh, but they also gave you a lot more in this page in this certain case in the artwork, and it gave a lot more, I think, a lot more subtlety to the scene, to have the dog portrayed like that. And so that wraps up an exciting issue number 5 from Assassin's Apprentice 2, which you could say is issue number 11 in the adaptation of the Assassin's Apprentice novel from Robin Hobb. So we got one more month to go in the Assassin's Apprentice 2, and we have, over 200 pages, or not quite 200 pages to go in the book, so we definitely know it's not going to get wrapped up next month. So, that begs the question, when is Assassin's Apprentice 3 coming out? All right. Well, maybe we'll know next month. Hopefully there'll be a little blurb in the issue. That's all for this week, though, this month. And that's all for Comics versus Prose number 11. Once again, Be good to each other, and thank you.